Sometimes all it takes is one game to completely ruin a studio's reputation. Welcome to Chaos Gaming, everybody. Do me a favor, make sure you're following the page with those notifications on. And the other day, we talked about games that saved their developers. Today, we're going to be looking at video games that absolutely ruined their developers. You let me know which of these disappointed you the most. Yep, just to get you right in the feels. And let's kick things off with Rogue Warrior. A game that has since become one of those so bad it's good games, and that is a weird thing. But unfortunately, a studio had to take the fall in order to get here. Rogue Warrior was developed by Rebellion, but that was only after the project was pulled away from Zombie Studios. Zombie Studios had been working on the game from 2006 to 9, but at that point, publisher Bethesda reportedly kicked the door in, said they weren't happy with the work being done, and they fired all of them. At that point, Rebellion Developments took over and rushed the game through for release by the end of the year. Now, Rogue Warrior, if you didn't know, it's a bad game, but people seem to forget what happened to the original developer. After Zombie Studios was fired from Rogue Warrior, they struggled to find work with major publishers going forward. They made a handful of not-so-good games like Saw 2 and Blackwater, but sadly, they shut down in early 2015. Many of the employees went on to make Builder Box games, which had a pretty solid success run so far, so we'll see what happens with them moving forward. But it's safe to say, Rogue Warrior tanked Zombie Studios. Next up is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. Arguably, but maybe not, I don't know, the worst skateboarding game ever made. You let me know if you agree or disagree. Pro Skater 5 was a complete disaster from conception to release. Now, the basic gist of it, Activision wanted to squeeze one more Tony Hawk game out of their contract. Okay, cool, which meant they needed to keep development fast and cheap. Not cool. To get the job done, they turned to Robomoto, who had made a few lesser remembered Tony Hawk games and a few lesser remembered Kinect games. Pro Skater 5 was released just a few months after development began. I'm not kidding. A few months. And Robomoto knew the release bill was such a mess, they were forced to push out a day one patch that was bigger than the game itself. Even after the patch, Pro Skater 5 was a mess. It was nowhere near the legacy of the series. Robomoto shut down just a year later after the game launched, and Activision drastically restructured how they do sports games. Thankfully, Activision got back on track with Pro Skater 1 and 2, the remake last year, but it was a shame the developer had to shut down in the process. Now let's come to present time. This is a big one. Cyberpunk 2077. Now, it's been a financial success from the looks of it, and if you just want to talk about the gameplay, it's very good. It's not quite as good as the Witcher games, but it's a solid sci-fi RPG. But the main issues lie from the absolutely unacceptable launch. Cyberpunk launched for PS4, Xbox One, Stadia, and PC in December of 2020, and it ended up being one of the biggest controversies of the year. On the consoles, the game barely functioned. On the PC, it was buggy. Cyberpunk clearly was not ready for release, but it had to be pushed out the door in order to get those juicy Christmas sales. Now, CD Projekt Red was one of the golden geese of gaming. But after Cyberpunk, I don't think many people are going to trust them again. Mark my words, the next game CD Projekt Red releases is going to be met with extreme skepticism, rightfully so, regardless of how amazing it looks on the surface. The launch of Cyberpunk was unacceptable, and I hate to say it, but any company who's willing to launch a game like that, well, you're going to be skeptical moving forward. Here's another one, it's just a laundry list, Fallout 76. Bethesda was already on rocky ground before 76, but after they put this one out, well, I don't think people are going to take them seriously for a while. They're going to have to build back that consumer trust. Fallout 76 was supposed to be this big online kind of MMO Fallout game, I guess, and it was Bethesda's first in-house developed game since Fallout 4. You already know the stories, I know. The game was broken on launch, missed a ton of features, dropped single-digit frame rates on consoles. It also didn't help that Fallout 76 was just not really a good game, even when it was working. Bethesda may be a decent publisher, and they may have some great games under their belt, but I don't think anybody is going to take them seriously as a developer until they earn back that trust. Fallout 4 rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, then Fallout 76 dunked them right into the trash can. Now, before you comment, yes, I know, Fallout 76 has improved a lot since launch, but think back to the drama. Think back to the controversy surrounding the game. Do you really think people are going to trust an in-house Bethesda game after that? I don't know. Now, let's rewind a decade. Splatterhouse. Raise your hand or drop a like if you remember this game. It could have been awesome, but there was a lot of backstage hiccups. It ended up being a game that destroyed Bottle Rocket Entertainment. Now, in case the name doesn't sound familiar, Bottle Rocket was a relatively small studio who had some solid games in the mid-2000s. They had Rise of the Kasai and Showdown for the PlayStation 2. And according to various interviews, Bandai Namco hired them to make a reboot of the 80s arcade cult hit Splatterhouse, but as a 3D brawler, similar to God of War and Devil May Cry, but much less complex. Sounds cool. Following a couple years of constant disagreement about the game design, Bandai fired Bottle Rocket and finished the game in-house. After that fiasco, well, Bottle Rocket's reputation was ruined, and a few months later, they were forced to shut their doors. It sucks. Next up is Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness. Do you ever wonder why Lara Croft needed a big reboot in the 2010s? Well, it's because of this game, and it not only ruined the franchise, but it ruined the series developer. The Tomb Raider franchise was developed by Core Design, had a ton of success in the late 90s, but at the turn of the millennium, Lara struggled to keep up with the competition. So in an effort to reinvent her, Core Design thought they would make a more darker, more gritty, serious entry, and it was called Angel of Darkness. The game launched in 2003 after a 3-year development cycle, and it wasn't worth it. Bad controls, buggy, weird story, none of the fun factor that Lara Croft games were known for, and their reputation was shattered after this one, and they were acquired by Rebellion Developments in 2006, and then they were shut down in 2010, and the Lara Croft IP went to Square Enix. Now let's get the little blue guy in here. Sonic Boom, Rise of Lyric. Now, this may be the worst Sonic game of all time. I don't know. What about Sonic 06? I don't know. Sonic Boom was developed by Big Red Button, and it was unfortunately the only thing they were known for. That sucks. Big Red Button was a brand new studio, and it was made up of some ex-Naughty Dog employees looking to change the 3D platforming gaming world for the 8th console generation. After all, Naughty Dog first came to prominence with games like Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter, so a new studio with that legacy in mind sounded pretty appealing to Sega. So they hired Big Red Button to reboot the Sonic IP, a brand new style directed at a Western audience. Now, according to various interviews of former employees, Sega was constantly butting in and demanding changes. It also didn't help that the studio was developing a game on brand new hardware, which there's lots of issues. Sonic Boom is the lowest scoring Sonic game of all time, and while Big Red Button is still in business, they haven't had a high profile game in years. Sonic Boom destroyed them, which is a shame. I mean, it's a shame. They had a lot of potential. Unfortunately, nobody's going to remember them for the talent. They're going to remember them for Sonic Boom. And you see how the publishers always step in and make things hard for the developers? At number 3, Superman 6. You know the story. Developed by French studio Titus Interactive, released in '99 after 2 years in development, and it was the worst game ever made. You played as Superman, yep. He tried to rescue his friends from Lex Luthor, but you just flew through green rings. The controls sucked. The graphics sucked. It was buggy, half-finished. It just sucked. It holds a world record for the worst reviewed superhero game of all time, and it put a serious dent in the developer's legacy. Following the release of it, Titus couldn't seem to get any good projects. I don't know why, and were basically demoted to a budget developer, one of those studios that movie makers go to when they need a cheap tie-in video game. They filed for bankruptcy in 2005, and while they developed over 50 games during their career, nobody's going to remember anything except for Superman 6. Okay, at number 2. Mass Effect Andromeda. Now, BioWare has been somewhat inconsistent throughout the decades, but even their lesser games were solid. That is, until they released this. Follow-up to Mass Effect 3. Expectations super high. Unfortunately, BioWare gave the project to an extremely inexperienced team within the company for reasons I don't understand. Andromeda was a tremendous step backwards for the Mass Effect series. It was, you already know, I'm not even going to go into it. It was just bad. BioWare had already rubbed people the wrong way with the ending of Bioshock 3 and the entirety of Dragon Age 2, but Mass Effect Andromeda seemingly marked a turning point. After that, Anthem, well, people, they're very hesitant with BioWare games. And at number 1, this could have been so cool, Haze. The most depressing one on the list because this studio was good. Haze was a PS3 exclusive shooter released in 2008 that Sony and Ubisoft marked as the Halo killer. The game was developed by Free Radical Design, which was a studio made of former Rare employees who had worked on games like Perfect Dark and GoldenEye. Free Radical was an extremely well-received studio. I mean, they even had the Time Splitters franchise, plus they were the ones working on Battlefront 3 before it was confusingly canceled by LucasArts. I mean, they were a super talented studio, but unfortunately, they were hit with a long string of bad luck once they signed on with Ubisoft and they developed Haze. Development was rushed, and you know, it was just, well, you may not know. You may not even remember the game. They just couldn't afford to keep their doors open after that. The studio was bought by Crytek in 2009. And then they closed their doors permanently in 2014. So there you have it. Those are video games that ruined their developer's career. You let me know one that should have been on the list that wasn't, and I'll see you soon.